The Winnipeg Jets have a new coach and a new direction. Harrison Lee of Locked On Winnipeg Jets joins us to discuss their prospects and their prospects for the season, all next on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On NHL podcast. Gil Martin, so glad you could join us here for the Monday show, and thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. The Winnipeg Jets have a new head coach, a new direction, and some intriguing prospects. Harrison Lee of Locked On Winnipeg Jets joins us to talk about that. And Harrison, what so far in your mind through the preseason and training camp has been the biggest difference that you see in this team with the addition of Rick Bowness behind the bench?
Brad Lambert. I'm just kidding, everyone. It's been a little bit more complicated than just one or two prospects. But I know, obviously, with the Jets, there's been a lot of buzz around the prospects and kids. But I think one of the biggest storylines that's maybe gone a little bit under the radar is how Rick Bowness has actually changed Winnipeg's tactical approach. I think a lot of the kids are really shining in preseason because Bones has sort of made it very clear that he wants a team that's aggressive, ambitious. Obviously, this team doesn't have like tremendous amounts of talent to work with. So I expect, towards the regular season, as we start to see, the standings tighten and Winnipeg start to deal with injuries, fatigue, maybe some underperforming players, I think Bones will want to sort of rein in some of the offensive skill and maybe try and make it a little bit more defensive. He did that with the Dallas Stars. And some people would say that was boring hockey. And yeah, I can't disagree. It wasn't always super watchable, but I think for a lot of reasons, the Jets could definitely do with some more discipline, a little more structure to the game. The past couple of coaching staffs, they just kind of had vibes and less of a plan. And so, Winnipeg was often left to their own devices, and that did not go well. So this time, I think Bones has shown that he's really happy to let the defense jump into the play and really activate aggressively. We've seen them drop below the faceoff circles, create plays from behind the net. Guys like Ville Heinola love playing this style. Heinola's racked up a couple of points in the preseason. Schmidt has bagged a game-winning goal. So there's stuff there that I think is good. Obviously, with the Jets, we don't really do that defending thing at all. Winnipeg has given up a lot of rush counters, and it's going to be a balancing act of trying to figure out how much can you push the envelope before you have to sort of pull it back in, and how much can Bowness just rely on the talent there to sort of carry the team. From my own perspective, I think the Jets sort of have to live or die by that aggression, because the Jets are going to struggle to score goals this year. The finishing talent is just, it's in very short supply once you move past the past couple of lines. And that's kind of why I think guys like Brad Lambert, we thought maybe he'd go to the WHL, maybe he would go to the Manitoba Moose. I think there's a legitimate chance, and it's very slim, but I do think he'll play Jets games this year. I'm pretty certain he'll at least get an audition. In terms of whether or not he might actually get a longer look, it kind of remains to be seen whether the Jets are faced with lots of injuries, contract situations, if they make any trades. Right now, I think the Jets have kind of put themselves in a position where there's not a lot of contract spaces to really bring in Brad and fit him into the team without having to waive somebody that they like. So they've kind of put themselves in a tough position, but I think, past maybe the trade deadline, heading into next season, players like Brad are definitely putting themselves in a good position to make the team as full-time starters. And, I feel like either way, the Jets kind of need to rely on him or talents like him this year because, again, the Jets just don't have a lot of finishing talent. They need that extra level of play. And if they're serious about trying to make the playoffs this year, because they only have like 2 seasons left where everyone is basically under contract, well, they're going to need to get some help from somewhere. And we all know the Jets don't sign anyone and they don't trade for anyone. So hopefully at least one of the kids steps up and Winnipeg can really showcase some of the great scouting and talent that they've been developing recently.
Talk to me about Lambert. What is 18 years old? What does he bring to the table, even at this young age, at this early stage of his pro career, that you've liked so far in training camp?
Man, Lambert is probably one of the most effortless skaters I've seen. Some people would say it has some of that McDavid-esque edge work, maybe a little bit of McKinnon. He's just able to blow by defenders. He's got excellent agility, and he has endless confidence. I think something that when he was with Lahti in Finland didn't really translate was, he needs to work with skill, and when he doesn't have that skill to work with, he tries to improvise. He tries to create on his own, and it wasn't really working. And I think that really did a number on his thought process of how to attack and how to create. Yesterday, we saw this game where he was against the Oilers, and he almost won it in overtime with this unbelievable sequence where he cut between like three defenders, drove straight through the slot, and dangled and almost scored, except for, I think it was Stuart Skinner in net, who had a fabulous save. And you can just see that Lambert's ability to sort of cut inside, score beautiful goals, and honestly drop off some really great passes for his line mates. He just brings a complete offensive threat. And if you're worried about like the defensive side of his game, well, he hustles back, he tries to force turnovers. The kid is just dynamite, and I think it's really good to see because the Jets haven't often drafted really good skaters who can drive transition, but Brad seems to do that in spades, and he just has so much skill to burn that it's kind of, I don't know, anytime he's on the ice, something fun is going to happen. And I think that is probably the highest praise I can give somebody of his caliber.
You mentioned there are a few other prospects who have made an impression early on in preseason. Who are some of they?
I think the biggest name that people are going to overlook because he doesn't really play a very sexy game is David Gustafsson. If you're looking for somebody who's a catalyst but does all of the detail plays, whether it's making small passes to the right outlets, looking for ways to just progress play up the ice, somebody who has defensive responsibility, somebody who constantly puts himself in good positions, Gus is kind of that guy. He does everything really well, and I think he really elevates those around him in a way that's very quiet. But if you know what details you're looking for, if you kind of understand how he thinks about attacking the offensive zone, you'll start to realize this kid is just incredibly gifted. And he doesn't let a play die. I've seen him dive for pucks that quite honestly look like they were gone. He just wants to keep the puck anywhere inside the offensive zone. And when it comes to defending, he's very strong. I wouldn't say he's like the most physical player, but I think he's done a really good job of using his frame and skill to, cut down on passing and shooting lanes. Aside from him, obviously, I think Ville Heinola is the name that Jets fans are they're very torn about. I think for my part, that 6D spot that's open for Sandberg, Stanley, or Heinola probably goes to Ville this year. Sandberg is considered the safer choice, but thus far, I feel like his defensive game hasn't really been outstanding. It's been okay, but Stanley, I think I've already penciled out of the spot. He just isn't really keeping up with it, and I think that the system Bones wants is too much for him to handle. Sandberg has done an okay job at times, but he just doesn't really have that extra level of offensive game and puck dominance that I think Bones is really looking for. Heinola is going to have defensive issues. I mean, we've seen him have a couple of really bad turnovers, some bad reads here and there. He doesn't always physically engage, but the thing that he does so well is when he's inside the offensive zone, he's just an absolute menace. He passes well, he shoots well. He can quarterback a power play better than almost any other defender I've seen outside of like Bufflin for the Jets. So I think that his skill set and the potential that he has as he starts to iron out some of those kinks at the NHL level, for me, just makes him the best choice. And he's already had a couple of points. I think he's probably had the most prominent impact on the defense. So hopefully he gets the spot, but it might just be one of those situations where the Jets feel he might be a little bit too risky this year.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Harrison, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
So our podcast is, of course, Locked On Winnipeg Jets. You can find us on Twitter at HLLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. And we're available on all the same platforms as the Locked On NHL podcast.
All right, Harrison, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Today's episode is brought to you by Simply Safe. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen Simply Safe Home Security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. And at Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know because I use Simply Safe in my own home. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. Here's why I love it. I mean, you can control the system from your phone with the Simply Safe app, and it's got a crystal clear HD live stream of your security cameras and a wide variety of high-tech sensors. With 24/7 professional monitoring, Simply Safe's agents call you the moment that a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home and can't be reached. Simply Safe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl to learn more. There's no safe like Simply Safe.